Hello, John Najarian here. If you want to trade like a rebel, if you want to party like a rebel, well, you got to come to Rebelcon 2022. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas, at the fabulous Four Seasons Resort. We start the 21st of September, go until September 24th. It will be more fun and more live trading than we've ever done before. That's why it's called Rebelcon 2022. We're going to have barbecues, we're going to have golf tournaments, and double the amount of live trading. So if you want to book that now, make sure you do, because the guest speakers, as soon as we announce those, this thing's going to be sold out. It's going to be something you do not want to miss. Limited to 250 people. Diamond, platinum, and gold packages are selling out. Sign up now for Rebelcon 2022 at the Four Seasons in Dallas, Texas.
Welcome to the Rebellion.
Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take on this Friday morning. Wow. For a 4-day week, it feels like a full month. I mean, absolutely incredible once again. Yesterday, taking a look at the Dow, how things were shaping up. Well, we're down about 300 points right out of the gate. It is what it is. But we started to accelerate to the upside. We completely just continued to do so the entire rest of the day, and actually closing on the highs of the day, up 435 points. NASDAQ never really got that negative. It was mostly hanging around the flat line for a while, but it started to accelerate it as well after about the first hour of trade or so, and continued to move all the way up and close highs of the day as well, up 2.7%. That's 322 points. A huge move once again for the NASDAQ. So we've seen a very, very different market of late. We've seen some pressing to the upside. So that's been pretty interesting to watch. You also see crude kind of hanging around that 114 to 117. Obviously, that's a big range, but that's kind of the range that we were sitting in yesterday. We were looking over at Bitcoin, hovering around 30,000. It's been close to that. It's been either side of 30,000 now the last couple of sessions. You got the 10-year trading around 291. That's changing a little bit today. Then you got volatility index. I'm looking at that volatility index trading right around 25.5 yesterday. It was in a fairly tight range again. And as I said on the halftime report yesterday, a little bit surprising it's not a little bit higher than it is right now, just because of those moves. When you consider, for instance, now I know it's measuring the S&P, but to just kind of look out, you take a look over at the Dow, down 300 points to finish up 400 points, 700-point move in a day. That's pretty substantial. And obviously the S&P had a pretty substantial move from the lows to the highs as well. So what were some of the areas that were really dominating to the upside? Consumer discretion, materials. Materials were strong the entire day. Consumer discretion was strong as well and absolutely accelerated. It was up about 3% yesterday. It was Tesla, it was Amazon, it was Home Depot, it was Lowe's, all those names participating to the upside. Then you look over at the material space, up almost 3% as well. Names like Freeport-McMoran, you look over at Vale, you look at Rio Tinto, a lot of those big, monstrous companies having very nice moves to the upside as well yesterday. You had technology up about 2.5% as well. Apple, Google, Netflix, Facebook, Tesla. Yes, all of those names moving to the upside pretty nicely. 2.5% move there. Industrials having a good day. You get the idea. It seemed like the entire market was really actually reacting very nicely. The only area that actually finished in the red yesterday was energy, and it was barely in the red, but considering where the price of crude is and so forth, you'd almost think that it would have been able to make it back into the green. That did not happen. It was down about 0.3%. So what were some of the names that were really dominant yesterday, really stood out? Generac, we talked about that one already. That was on the positive side, along with Etsy. Throw in Boeing, by the way, and I didn't put that in there with the industrials, but I should have. But Boeing with a pretty outstanding day as well. Then you look over at the chips, AMD and NVIDIA, both having a pretty solid performance as well. Salesforce continues just to be an absolute animal, along with Nike, Datadog, Okta. We had Workday, we had Zscaler, all those names working to the upside. There was a few to the downside, but it was very few. It really was a very large participation at almost every level. Names like Hormel getting hit a little bit yesterday. Hewlett-Packard Enterprises taking a little bit of a shot. And the one area that definitely did stand out a little bit for me, at least, was some of those names in healthcare. I was looking at names like Lilly, Merck, Moderna, Amgen. They were all moving to the downside and having a little bit of a struggle. Kraft Heinz, yes, we did have that for unusual, and unfortunately, that was not performing very well yesterday. Makes some sense of what was working, what was not working quite as well. I would put Kraft Heinz into that category in terms of the sector itself. So today, we wake up, we're looking for those numbers. Those numbers were pretty good. They were a beat relative to what the expectations were, 390,000 jobs, but a definite huge slowdown from April. So the interpretation of that was more so looking at April to now, more so than what were we expecting and what did we get? And because of that, all of a sudden people start manipulating around a little bit, start thinking about what the Fed might do, where are rates going, and blah, blah, blah. All of that starting to come together. Markets were down about 200 points early on for the Dow and the NASDAQ for the most part. We opened around that same area. We did kind of get a little bit of a recovery at the top of the hour, and then we started sliding right back down again. So last I looked, we were down about 200 points on the Dow, about 230 points on the NASDAQ. So we were getting a little bit beat up there. You had volatility on the other hand. Is it pricing in the weekend? Maybe. It's a little bit earlier than usual if that's the case. But last I looked, we were actually below 25 on the volatility index today. Looking at the VXN, it's still well above 30, about 31 and change. But looking at that volatility index, and in that no man's land, as we like to call it, between 20 and 25, where you really don't get the good gauge that you'd like to get. 10-year, as I said, did get a little bounce up. It was trading a lot closer to 3, actually, about 296. Lululemon. You could not get too much better of a quarter than Lululemon got. But there was a little picking and a little this and a little bit of that. But when you look at those numbers and you look at the revenue growth, you look at the same store sales, the earnings growth, all of that, you even start to look at direct to consumer, up 32%. Across the board, very, very solid. But when people start looking into this marketplace, they're getting some concerns. They look at a name like Lulu and they say, well, look at the valuation. It's a little bit steep. It is, relatively speaking, but let's also look at what that growth is. So when you look at the growth, in my mind, it's still a name that I've been holding for multiple years now. It was in the double digits when I actually first entered into it. I have yet to see an opportunity that makes any sense to get out of it. Would I be adding to it today? Probably not, but maybe start looking at it over the next couple of days to see exactly what, let the dust settle a little bit. But that's a name that certainly did, as far as earnings season, one of the very best earnings reports that I have seen. So I mentioned crude as well. Crude still holding right around that 117 level. Technology was down a little bit early, down about 2%. Consumer discretion down about 1.5% early, down a little over close to call it 2.5%. Financials definitely started to accelerate a little bit to the upside or the downside rather, down a little over 1%. I had energy actually starting to step up a little bit. It was up about 0.75%. It's up about 1% last I looked. So a lot going on. What's really kind of powering things outside of just looking at the sectors themselves? Twitter stands out today. Obviously, some commentary from Elon Musk talking about Tesla, but Twitter with a little bit of a bounce today. A lot of those oil names definitely moving to the upside. I was looking at Exxon, great start to the day. Schlumberger, Conoco, names like Marathon Petroleum, all those names with a nice move to the upside. Okta as well. Merck, Chevron, J&J bouncing back a little bit from yesterday where we were seeing some of those pharma names, as I mentioned, to the downside. But to the downside today, it's names like Micron and Etsy and Apple and Salesforce and Tesla and American Airlines and some of these names all getting pressure and a little bit of a push to the downside. DocuSign, Lucid, Zoom, all of those to the downside. But we do have some positives in there as well, so let's not forget about that. Now, as we start looking forward, I got 2 unusuals, and then we're out of here for the week. So enjoy your weekend. And, oh, by the way, I forgot one thing. Before I get into that, I got to give you a quick quickie here. It's the final day, the Memorial Day that we talked about, Memorial Day week. We are giving away, or not giving away, but we are discounting 25%. That ends today. So if you want to attend our big event, Rebelcon, it's going to be in September. It's going to be exciting down in Dallas. If you want to be a person who wants to be signed up for that and you get a 25% discount, this is the final day for that. So I would encourage you to take a look at that if you have interest in going there. I think it should be a lot of fun. We always have a great time and a lot of great information at these conferences. I think you'd look forward to this one as being just as good, maybe even better than all of the rest. So should be a great time. We'll see in September, but now is the time. You got to do that today. It's got to be executed today. So if you want 25% off, I got two of them and I'm out of here. American Airlines is number one. It was trading just underneath $17. The June 24th expiring 17 and a half calls. We had a buyer of 2,800 of those, going anywhere between 60 cents and about 65 cents. Gives you a little bit of time, a little bit of a recovery, obviously a little sell-off today. Sometimes I like seeing a sell-off with call buying. Tells me somebody thinks this thing's getting pushed down a little bit too far. Maybe it's got a little bit of runway to the upside. Number two, STEM. Now, renewable energy storage is where we are here. It's not been a name that's performed great. It's hit on our unusual on plenty of occasions. I actually took a look back to see, has this hit a lot? Because I don't recall seeing the name as much, but it has hit fairly frequently. At this point in time, stock is trading a little bit under 9. We got a buyer of 4,000 of the June 10 calls. Those are going for 40 cents up to about 50 cents for those calls as well. So renewable energy we talk about a lot all the time. I put those together because I think oftentimes they do work with and against one another very frequently. So oftentimes you get the First Solars of the world that are working at the same time as maybe you're seeing some of the oil companies and that type of thing. So keep an eye on that name as we're watching the price of crude going up, 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 up. Some of the renewables get a little more interesting for a lot of people as well. People start talking about those. Keep an eye on this STEM. Should be pretty interesting. Folks, have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you on Monday.